Welcome to yet another episode of Best Available Podcast. This is number 7. I am Ryan Waldish, joined as always by Matt DeLuca. If you listened to the podcast last week, which I don't know why you wouldn't, but if you didn't, we had mentioned that we might have a guest on the horizon who has proceeded to ghost us. Not going to say who it is. We're still going to keep that a surprise. I know this person is very busy, so I'm not going to put it on them too much, but just wanted to give everyone a quick update. We got a jam-packed show today. I'm looking at my notes here. We got some NFL. We got baseball, golf, hockey, stock car racing, and then we have Start Bench Cut and Pops My Tarts. Me and Matt prepared last night. Not that we don't prepare for the show normally, but I think we're going to be able to keep it at a respectable time this week. We're pretty confident about that. Time will tell, but Matt, this was a big weekend for sure. Super Mario 3D All-Stars released on Friday, so we got to take a wonderful trip to the local Best Buy. Along with that, the weather was absolutely perfect. Today is a big day. It's the UN International Day of Peace I saw on my calendar, and tomorrow is an even better day because it's officially the start of autumn. So a lot of big events going on. I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited to get into some of these sports topics. Love talking about sports. So how are you doing?
Well, Ryan, it's almost the start of fall, which is perfect because it's also the fall of the Eagles' grace from the NFL's top ranks at 0-2. But I'm good. I haven't opened up the game yet for 3D All-Stars. I know you have some couple stars to your name so far. Friend of the program on the content team, Joey Colonna, was racking up the stars Friday night on his Twitch stream. So shout out to Joe. But no, I'm good. The weather has been nice. I've been inside for most of it. So yeah, hopefully I'm going to get out. It's going to be tough though to play some basketball because my dad put some fertilizer down on the grass. So if I miss a shot, the fertilizer is going to get on the ball and then I got to wipe it off. So that's a big
First world
inconvenience.
problem for you, Matt. Sorry to hear about that.
Well, Ryan, you were baking some cinnamon rolls on Saturday. Tell us about that experience.
So it was a good time. I saw Cody Ko make a video about him making some cinnamon buns for his 5 million subscribers special on YouTube. And I watched him making them and I said, okay, well, that seems like it could be a fun fall activity to do. So let me do that. It takes a lot of time. I knew that going in, but still it surprised me how long it took. A lot of it is just, you got to wait for the dough to rise, got to wait for the buns to rise. That's where a lot of the time comes in. But it was a good time. They turned out very well. Not to toot my own horn. I usually try to remain pretty humble, but they were very, very good. I've gotten rave reviews about them. I think they're probably better, and I haven't had it a lot, but I'm pretty sure they're better than Cinnabon. I thought they were that good. I would definitely do it again one weekend. I think it would go a little quicker this time because I actually know what I'm doing now. But yeah, it was fun. It's fun to make stuff on your own, whether it's food or, maybe you're kind of like a woodworker and you like to make like something like that. It's fun to just do stuff with like your hands, make something on your own. It gives you a nice source of satisfaction.
Well, that's my hobby with Legos, man. I got some big Star Wars Lego sets over the weekend, an exclusive one. This is where Ryan calls me a nerd, but I don't care. An exclusive Ultimate Collector Series set that came out on Thursday. So I scooped that up, much to the chagrin of my bank account. But yeah, it looks like we both had good weekends. Who enjoyed your cinnamon rolls more, your mom or your dad? Who gave it the highest reviews?
Them equally, both equal. Yeah, they were very. I mean, I don't think they knew what to expect going into it either. But
did anyone else get to try them? Who gave it the highest review?
Everyone has given it very high reviews.
What would Gordon Ramsay say about it?
Well,
you have to tweet it at him and be like, hey, Gordon, what's the deal with my cinnamon rolls? And then
I don't know if they're quite on his level yet, but I think for regular people, they're probably pretty good. So I'm excited. Someone actually asked me for the recipe, so I kind of felt like an actual baker at that point. It's like, okay, here you go. But it was a good time, good weekend for all. It was a good weekend for me personally until Sunday. So we'll get into that. But we'll talk about some football. We're going to do something different this week. We're not going to talk for the same amount of time for every game just because some of these games, they weren't super interesting. So we'll talk for a little bit about a selection of games that we've agreed deserve it, and then we'll just kind of go through some quick hits for the rest of them. We'll start in Dallas, or maybe it's Arlington, I think is where that stadium technically is, with the Cowboys and the Falcons. And unfortunately, I got to pour a virtual one out for my co-host here because he bought in yesterday to the Falcons' hot start, as I'm sure a lot of people did.
We have to do the timestamp to it. 2:16 p.m. I texted officially to our group chat, I'm all in on the Falcons. Then at 4:36, Ryan, as you're going to describe, I had to retract that statement from the record.
I keep trying to tell these kids you can't trust the Atlanta Falcons, and yet it's not getting through to them for some reason. The Cowboys looked very bad. They looked like a peewee football team early on. They fumbled the ball 3 times, not even to mention the fact that throughout the game they tried 2 fake punts in their own territory, something that me and Matt have experience with from back in high school. And it usually doesn't work out very well. I'll say that. And yet, the Cowboys somehow, they were down late in the fourth quarter to the point where late in the fourth quarter, Atlanta had a 99.9% win probability. And I encourage all of you to look at the win probability graph because it is something else. It's funny. It goes from 99 to like 65, like almost immediately. The big story in this, well, there were a couple stories, obviously. The biggest one, which a lot of people are talking about, is what the hell the Falcons were doing on that onside kick attempt. The theory is that the coaches will tell people, and I kind of understand this to an extent, if it doesn't look like it's going 10 yards, don't touch it. But at the same time, you can't just let Dallas run to the 40, get all their guys around it, that way they can dive on it. So there were multiple guys, multiple Falcons, that had a clear angle to that ball on the onside kick. Listen, as long as Atlanta recovers that onside kick, it's over. Dallas can't do anything. So I don't know if Atlanta threw the game. I don't know if it was bad coaching. I don't know if the guys on the onside kick, the hands team, didn't know what they were supposed to be doing. I don't know if Dan Quinn had addressed this in a post-game press conference. I haven't had a chance to take a look and see if he made a comment about it. But that was bad, Matt. I mean, there's a lot of jokes and memes going around about, oh, Atlanta blew a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl, this and that. Well, clearly that's not just an isolated issue. This team struggles, and they have struggled for years to just do the small things that you need to do to win football games. When you're up by as much as they were in the fourth quarter, I think at one point they had a 36-24 lead. Maybe it was even 39-24. You can't blow that. That's unacceptable in the NFL, Matt. So, what do you think happened? Because I watched the game back. I don't know if the defense was gassed. I don't know if they just lacked discipline or conditioning, but it just blows my mind that something like this can happen again to the same team.
You know, it's funny. I have this inside joke with my cousin who reads my articles, and we have a running joke of how many times I could work 28-3 into an article casually. I didn't think it could happen again. I would argue it's kind of hard to compare something like this to the Super Bowl just because of the stakes that happened those years ago, Ryan. It's kind of funny, right? So they're like the NFC version of the Chargers in some ways, where they find just these strange ways to lose despite having so much talent on their team. I want to give a little bit of credit to Dak Prescott in some ways for bringing them back. He gets a lot of crap from a lot of people. Their offense looked good, right? I mean, outside of the start they had, which was atrocious, we can all agree to that. But when I'll get to the Falcons in a second, but I want to spin zone the Cowboys. You want your team, Ryan, and I think you would agree too, if you have the expectations that you have in Dallas to start like crap like that, to respond and turn it around. You want your team to be able to do that, and they went out there and did that. In terms of Atlanta, Ryan, I mean, I dodged your initial question because I have no idea really how this happened. It jumped out early. I sent a text at one point towards halftime. I dozed off for about 10 minutes, took a little nap, gear up for the second half of the day, woke back up, and it was a competitive contest. The crazy part about it, too, was the zero turnover factor of it for Atlanta. The fact that Matt Ryan throws for 4 touchdowns. They'll look back on it, too, with the drop that Julio had when Russell Gage threw that pass, which would have been another touchdown. I don't know. It's just I bought into the Falcons. I'll admit that I was wrong, Ryan. I think at some point you have to look at Dan Quinn and be like, this is not our guy. If he's a defensive-minded coach, Ryan, and you're up 20-0 after the first quarter with a guy of his pedigree, right, and his track record coming into Atlanta, that game shouldn't end 40-39, right, because you're up 20 after the first quarter. So I don't blame really anyone on the off. They couldn't have asked for a more perfect offensive output out of their team. So this really comes down to defense again, and you and I talked about it last week. I talked about it in my preview for this division. Comes down to defense, and it comes down to Dan Quinn. And I said the defense was going to be as far as they take them, and it took them to another loss. It's just it's bad. And that onside kick, too, I didn't really know what to expect. When you kick it with the ball on the ground on the side like that, usually never gets recovered just because you have to get like the perfect spin rate on the ball to kind of do what Zerline was able to get it to do. That's how it's supposed to kind of go. But we've seen onside kicks where players will kind of get overzealous and try and go after it right away, and then it creates problems. My biggest memory of it was when Green Bay did it in the NFC Championship game all those years ago, went off the guy's hands, and Seattle went on to win the game. I think it was Green Bay. It might have been the other way around. Either way, it happened in that game. But I don't know why Dan Quinn plays so conservatively at sometimes. I don't know why they make these mental errors. It's a disappointment. If I'm a Falcons fan, Ryan, you have all this talent. You have your best quarterback in franchise history. You go out and get all these other first-round picks on offense, and then you can't win games. I would be disappointed. I'd call for Dan Quinn's job. Not after this loss, but if this continues to happen, it probably would get to that point.
I'll call for it after this loss. I called for it after last week's loss. I called for it after last season ended. I think it's starting to become clear that this guy is a perfect example of a guy that can't run a team. Maybe, listen, I don't even know, based on how this defense has performed at his time there, I don't even know how responsible he was for what Seattle did when he was there. So now I can't even say that this guy will be a really good coordinator somewhere else when he gets fired, because I don't know that now. I don't know if there are other people contributing. I don't know if there's just the talent factor that made him look good, but clearly this guy is not fit to run a team. The one year this team had any type of remote success, and I know they made the wild card round a few years ago. They won a couple of years ago, I guess. They won that, then they lose to Philadelphia in the divisional round. But the one year they had any type of substantive success since Dan Quinn has been there, the year they made the Super Bowl, I think it's becoming more and more obvious that he had nothing to do with that. Clearly, it was all Kyle Shanahan that year. So I don't know how you could be a guy like Arthur Blank and the rest of that front office, look at the way this team's performed overall during Dan Quinn's time there and say, you know what? He's doing some good things for this team. I don't know, Matt. I can't understand why teams just let bad coaches stay longer than they should. I understand. It seems like a lot of them operate in like the sunk cost fallacy. Like, we've already invested this much into him. Let's just give him the year. when something like this happens, that's unacceptable. And obviously, there's multiple reasons why something like this would happen. I hate to scapegoat somebody, but you got to do something. You have to change something because this is unacceptable. You mentioned how good the offense was. If you score 39 points, you better win that game 100% of the time. If you force 3 fumbles, if you stop 2 fake punts, you should be able to win 100% of the time. So for something like this to happen in the National Football League, and I understand the every given Sunday, whatever, you can't let this happen if you're an NFL team, especially a team with aspirations like the Falcons had going into this year.
Well, I think another issue too, Ryan, one thing they really emphasized with the Dallas game last week when they were in SoFi Stadium was the offensive line and the injuries that they sustained there and a couple new pieces that they had to insert. And you go into this week, and we talk about the defensive background of Dan Quinn. They only had 1 sack in the whole game. They came from 2 guys combining on one play. So I don't know where the pass rush is to be able to put any kind of pressure. And again, you did force all those fumbles, but I still, if you look at what Dallas is with the state of their offensive line and kind of the injuries they had, you can't go in there and have 1 sack. You're not going to win football games like that. You're not going to win when you give up 450 passing yards, most of which coming later in the game. It's all defense is their problem. If we're going to find the scapegoat, it's their defense. And they lost a couple guys that turned out to be big losses, and they weren't able to kind of restock there. And it's going to be an issue, especially when they get into divisional play, and they're going to have to play Tampa Bay and New Orleans twice. So this was a must-win game for both teams. And in a lot of ways, Atlanta did win the game, but then they just blew it at the end. I think if you really look at it, they won this game, but then they just handed it to Dallas at the end. They did everything they possibly could and then just lost. And I don't know. I agree with you. I don't know how you kind of recover from this. If they were in any other division of football, it'd be different. But when you have Tom Brady and Drew Brees battling it out, you're not going to win anything. So see you next year, Atlanta. Thanks for coming. But I don't get it. They've been consistently good, Ryan, for pretty much since you and I have been in high school too. And yet they can't put it together. Doesn't look like it's going to be this year. So thanks for coming out, I guess, Atlanta. That's the best I could give you.
Dak Prescott, 450 yards through the air and a touchdown, 3 rushing touchdowns on the day. As Matt said earlier, he looked very, very good in bringing the Cowboys back to a W. Next game that I want to talk about, another quarterback that's getting a lot of MVP talk, is Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. So Josh Allen threw for 417 yards. He rushed for another 18. He averaged close to 5 yards on the ground. He was able to bring Buffalo back. They were down 20-17 with 10 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. And then he led 2 touchdown drives. And Miami got a touchdown late. It obviously didn't matter, but you take a look at this Buffalo team. I hate to say this because a good mark of a good team is that they beat the teams that they're supposed to beat. And to Buffalo's credit, they beat the Jets week 1. They beat the Dolphins week 2. I said last week that Allen didn't look as good as people thought. If you just looked at the stats, I said that we need to kind of pump the brakes. I still think we need to pump the brakes a little bit. I'm not trying to act biased. I'm not trying to make it like, oh, I'm definitely right about this guy. He's not very good. He's doing some very good things this year. But I need to see him do it against better teams, right? They're playing against a team that might be the worst team in football, week 1. They play against another team that's not going to be super great. I understand the numbers look very good. He looks better than he has throughout his NFL career. I still think he's doing some of the same things that he was doing at Wyoming that made him such a big question mark coming into the league. However, I can kind of start to see the trend for me and my support for Josh Allen, it's not just a flat line. It's the slightest. I'm not going to say like a 45-degree angle, maybe like a 25-degree angle. It's kind of starting to go up, but I need to see a little more. But Matt, I think we can tell this Buffalo team is very talented. I think we can tell that they're going to make a run for the division title. And if Josh Allen is actually as good as it seems like he has been throughout these first 2 weeks, this is probably going to be a team that could make a run in the AFC. To a Super Bowl, probably not. But to maybe the championship game, if everything goes right, you know, if I'm going to overreact through 2 weeks, I think that's something that could happen.
They got to win the division first, Ryan. I agree. You got to beat the teams that are on your schedule. They did that. The Patriots were a prime example of that for a number of years. You can't control which division you're in and how you play the games or which order you play them in. But they got the job done. Miami might have been a little closer than I think Sean McDermott would have liked. But listen, they're a good team. And they were, in many ways, the better of the teams in the AFC East last year, too. They just kind of were in this hole because New England started 8-0 right off the bat. Buffalo couldn't really come back from that, but they made a late run. A lot of people forget that. And if they just remembered how to play football, they would have won a playoff game last year, too. So it's not like this team's a surprise coming out of nowhere. They've been building this for a while. You are coming across as a Josh Allen hater. I know a lot of America disagrees with you. I'm kind of in the middle. I mean, I think he's good, but I think he's got to go out there and play well. You got to win the division if you're Josh Allen. I think the scariest thing to Buffalo fans, though, was watching Sunday Night Football last night. We'll talk about that later. But he made some throws and he needed to. He made some plays. Everyone talks about how he threw a guy down on a scramble on third down. He didn't get the first down, so I don't know why we're all celebrating that play. And they do this more years than you think to start undefeated through the month of September. You know, the Rams aren't a slouch, but you get them at home, traveling across the country. So I don't know. It's a good team. I think Josh Allen gets a little too much hate. If you go back and look at last year, he was one of the reasons why they kind of came back into the mix towards the end of the year.
Too much hate.
Ryan,
I don't think he gets enough.
This is like when one of our friends hates on Dak Prescott so much. I don't understand.
No.
Why?
Stop. Hold on.
And you got to remember, this guy played at Wyoming. He's a third-year quarterback, whatever year he is. He's still learning the game of football a little bit. I mean,
still learning the game of. Okay, hold on. Let's slow down here. The difference between
he also plays for the Buffalo Bills, Ryan.
The difference between the Dak thing and this is that Dak is actually a good quarterback. He's shown that. There's evidence that he's a good quarterback. Josh Allen.
And Josh Allen has too.
Josh Allen doesn't get any hate. He's this big, tall guy who has a big, strong, muscly arm who can heave it down the field.
Ryan,
that's why people like him. They see this guy throw the ball deep. He hits on one deep pass, and people are like, oh, my goodness, this guy's the next coming. He's going to be great. He's going to be top 5. Nobody's ever hated on this guy. Not one person. People tried to find so many reasons to not blame that playoff loss on him. Like, this. I mean, Josh did what he could. No way. No way. No.
Ryan, if you recall the quarterbacks for this team over the past decade, he's by far in the conversation for some of the better ones. I mean,
that's
Tyrod Taylor,
that's not a big bar to,
Jones.
That's not a big bar to
Trent
clear, though.
Edwards, Kyle Orton.
That's just like you're the biggest.
And I don't even know if
can.
Kyle Orton played for the Bills, but he
did.
Probably did. There's a long list of bad people that came through there, but I'm saying he's shown more good moments than bad moments. Unlike a lot of the guys they brought in before.
I don't know if I'd go that far. He's shown a lot of bad moments.
Ryan, the guy threw for 417 yards and 4 touchdowns yesterday.
against the Dolphins.
Yeah, against a very good defensive line of Brian Flores, who brought in a lot of good defensive pieces in the offseason.
Listen, if he does it against some good teams,
you're going to sit there. You can't.
I'll buy in. People really need to pump the brakes on this guy.
What makes the Dolphins bad isn't their defense; it's their offense that can't consistently stay on the field and score points. It's not their defense. That was the same thing last year. They went out and added guys too. No one's great after week 2. I mean, the way Kansas City played yesterday, they're not 100% on offense. So not everyone is at full speed, ready to go. Everyone's working out kinks because there's no preseason. So that excuse, in my opinion, doesn't work. No one's 100% right now. You're going up against a Brian Flores defense. And you got to remember, he took over a team that was absolute awful. So to sit there and say that it's just a pushover team, Miami's issue is on offense. Everyone's calling for them to put in Tua Tagovailoa, and you're sitting here saying that because it's the Dolphins' defense, he can't go out there and throw for 407. What do you want him to throw for 1,000 yards in a game? Would that have been a good performance?
The problem is that through week 1, his ball placement, and this is going back obviously to when he started in his career, his ball placement was the worst in the NFL. Right?
Oh, here we go with these analytics here.
It's not even analytics. The ball, you can watch the games and see that his ball placement sucks, right? He makes very dangerous decisions still when he throws the ball. Even if the interceptions don't show up on the stat sheet, he makes very dangerous decisions sometimes when he throws the ball. And it's not even like, oh, well, all quarterbacks do from time to time, not to his level. But because this guy is tall, because he's aggressive, he runs through everybody, because he has the strong arm, people seem to like this guy a lot. I don't think there's not enough information on this guy yet to say he's been good. It all trends towards the bad side. It all trends towards all the question marks he had coming out of Wyoming are still there. And this is why I feel so bad. The main because he's going to have to get paid soon. The main question is whether or not you can pay this guy. The real question is whether or not he can carry the team. The first 2 years, the answer was clearly no. He could not carry the team. And so that's why I say, it's great that he beat the Jets. It's great that he beat the Dolphins. You need to do it more consistently. I've seen great 2-week stretches from quarterbacks before that aren't very good. So until he proves me wrong, until I get proven otherwise, this is just another 2-week stretch of a guy that probably isn't a great starter as much as people make him out to be. Now, listen, as soon as he proves me wrong, as soon as he does this consistently, I'm going to take my foot off the brake. I'll do that. I can admit when I'm wrong, but I'm not wrong yet. It's way too early to say that this guy suddenly turned everything around. Way too early.
The guy went 10-6 last year. He has one of their 2 playoff appearances in the past decade.
No. He didn't go 10-6. The team went 10-6. He did not carry that team to 10 wins. As the starting
quarterback,
QB wins is a very flawed statistic. He did not contribute as much as the rest of that team to that 10-6 record. There was the game against Dallas on Thanksgiving,
but he still.
There was a game against Dallas on Thanksgiving that people like to point to. That was it. That was the game. If he can do that over a full season, he's great. He'll be a very good top-tier quarterback. But it wasn't like that the entire year. That was 1 win. The other 9 wins, it wasn't there. The 6 losses, it wasn't there.
Okay, when you look at people are going to go follow the stats, you see a lot of games under 200 yards passing. You got to remember, he didn't really have a lot of weapons to his name last year to work with as a second-year guy. They went out and got Stephon Diggs in the offseason.
He had a great coaching staff and a lot better weapons than people like to make out last year. He had a good, talented supporting cast a year ago. And it's even better this year. Which is why I'm saying if he can't put it together this year, then I don't know what people are going to hang their hats on with this guy.
If he can't put it together this year, he's 2-0.
2 weeks. 2 weeks is what I'm trying to say. It's only been 2 weeks.
But I'm saying as of now, I'm not saying he's going to be an MVP and the best. I think he's the
Well,
fourth or fifth best quarterback in the AFC.
even still through 2 weeks, he's still been making mistakes that you don't want him to make. He still have the
Now
same
we're
ball placement
nitpicking.
issues.
I mean, Cam Newton made mistakes last night. Are you going to criticize him? Russell Wilson
no,
made a
but
mistake
I'm
last
just
night. You going to
saying he's
criticize
making
him?
the same mistakes. He still has the ball placement issues. He should have had multiple interceptions against the Jets that were dropped.
I think you're just hating right now, man.
I'm not hating on him. He's just not as good as people make him out to be. And listen, I can't say this enough. Maybe he will be. Maybe he will. Is he better than when he came into the league? Yes, he is. But that wasn't a very high bar to clear because he came into the league very, very, very raw. He needs to do this against better teams consistently before I crown his ass and say that he's the next coming. He's going to be a great quarterback.
And to your point, Ryan, they're gonna play some good teams. I mean, look at their schedule for the next month. The Rams, good team. At Vegas, going to be a good game. At Tennessee,
defense,
good team. And then versus Kansas City on Thursday night at home. So like we're gonna see what this team is within the next month. And you got to put some respect on the guy's name, at least temporarily.
I said
you can retract it. You can, yeah.
I already did. I said, listen, he has done some better things this year than he has in the past. But you need to keep your foot on that brake pedal. It's too early. He's still doing things that you don't like to see that are a little concerning. And that's that. The 3 games, this is going to be our quick hits. Okay. Talking about Josh Allen, man.
You're just a hater, man. Yeah.
Stop. Just, I am a realist, not a hater. The 3 games we're going to talk about next are little quick hits. I'm going to call this the injury kind of section because there are a lot of injuries that happen in these games, a lot of major injuries. So Denver, Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh starts off the season 2-0. They pick up the win over the Broncos, who fall to 0-2. Denver lost their starting quarterback, Drew Lock. I think he's going to be out for several weeks. So they had to put in Jeff Driscoll. They weren't going to win the game in Pittsburgh with Jeff Driscoll. That's obvious. So they lose 26-21. San Francisco and the Jets, it seemed like people were getting injured every other play. San Francisco still managed to pull out the W 31-13, but Garoppolo on a bum ankle, he ended up leaving the game. So he might not even play next week from what I was reading. I don't know. So they put in Nick Mullins. They still did what they needed to do. They beat a very, very, very bad Jets team, 31-13. The Jets suffered injuries too. Artificial turfs to be outlawed, especially the artificial turf at MetLife. And then in the Chicago game, Chicago and the Giants, Bears won 17-13. Giants lost their main source of offense in Saquon Barkley to what should be a torn ACL. And then they lose Sterling Shepard as well. So now the Giants, who have fallen to 0-2, not that their season wasn't done before, but it's definitely done now. Chicago, I think, might be one of the least inspiring 2-0 teams we've seen in a while. They shouldn't have beaten Detroit, but Detroit collapsed. They beat a very, very bad Giants team. I'm not buying into it. So do you have any quick thoughts about that group of games that you want to get out there? Any takes?
So it's another riveting season of football in the city of New York. I don't know when the last time either of those teams were really good or when both of them were good at the same time. Sorry, Jets fans, you stink. Your coach needs to go. I think that was, if it hasn't been prevalent to people yet, I think it showed itself yesterday. A lot of the play calling was scrutinized. A lot of what he said after the game was talked about. You know, people try and keep justifying keeping that guy around. He's the issue. But yeah, it's the injury tour that you talked about. You definitely feel for those guys, but Adam Gase has to go, Ryan. They're the worst team in football by far. Every game that they play is going to be a loss. They're just, I don't know. It's not a good situation for Sam Darnold to be in. It's almost like Adam Gase just when Sam Darnold is getting comfortable and getting on a nice little pace, then they just run the ball like 4 straight times. So I don't get it, but you got to hope for San Fran's sake, Garoppolo doesn't miss a lot of time. Because they also lost Raheem Mostert too. They don't think that's as serious, but they play in the hardest division of football, so they're going to need those guys back soon.
Tennessee had their home opener, and they pulled out a very tough one over the visiting Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, this Matt, I wanted to devote a little more time to this game because of something that I said in our AFC preview episode a couple weeks ago. Even though this Jacksonville team might not win a lot of games, they are going to be very fun to watch. And through 2 weeks, we've seen that. Gardner Minshew has looked very, very good. He's looked like a great quarterback, which is – I wasn't expecting this. I thought that he could be a serviceable stopgap, but he has exceeded my expectations through his first 2 years. He has done a lot of good things, especially as a guy that went in the 6th round. He brought the team back. Once again, they were down, just like they were to Indianapolis a week ago. This time they were down 30-17 with 2 minutes to go in the third quarter. And so Minshew and the offense, they proceed to put together 2 touchdown drives. They tie the game 30-30. Stephen Gostkowski hits a 49-yard field goal with a minute and a half to go. Jacksonville had a chance to drive down the field. They couldn't do it. But, Matt, this Jacksonville team is a lot of fun to watch. I'm not saying they're going to make a run at a playoff spot. I'm not that far off the deep end. Obviously, they're still not very talented. But I think these types of teams are fun. The teams that, I hate to use these cliches, but they're scrappy. They just grind it out. They do some fun things, both on the offensive and the defensive ends. But for Tennessee, Matt, I'm not impressed with this Tennessee team this year. I know so far. I know that week 1, having to go to Denver. Denver's a tough place to play, especially week 1 when you're not conditioned. Then you have to come back home, basically across the country for week 2. I know they put up 33 points. I know Tannehill has looked very good, but I don't know, man. Something's missing with this Tennessee team for me. I think they have the ability to get better, but right now there's something missing.
I kind of disagree with that one. I mean, I don't think they're going to be a Super Bowl contender, but they're not a slouch of a team.
The
Ryan, let me ask you this:
very bad.
Gardner Minshew or Josh Allen, who has performed better in your eyes?
Through the first 2 weeks, Josh Allen.
All right,
Minshew has looked very, very good. He's been one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league so far, in my opinion. Tannehill's right there, too. He's been another top 5 quarterback so far this year.
Well, definitely Tannehill, and that's the guy I wanted to touch on from this game. To kind of correlate this to the last team I just spoke on in the Jets, if this isn't an indictment on Adam Gase's coaching ability, I don't know what is, right? So Tannehill was in his last year in Miami with Adam Gase, and then they kind of kick him to the curb. He goes to Tennessee, wins comeback player of the year, now going into this first full year as a starter, and he's racking up 3+ touchdowns every week. To me, that shows multiple things. One, that Ryan Tannehill kind of got, the bad end of the deal for a lot of his years in Miami and just needed good coaching. And 2, that Adam Gase is just even worse for letting a guy like this go, who's playing well and he's winning games. Tennessee, look, you play in a division that nobody knows what the hell is going to happen each week, right? Because no one could have realistically picked a divisional winner this year. We didn't know if the Titans were going to be for real. They were the hottest team in football going into the postseason last year. They knock off Tom Brady and Lamar Jackson in back-to-back weeks. They go into this year with, I think, 2 good wins. And again, I don't think you can control who you play in your schedule. Oh, well, you played Drew Lock without Cortland Sutton on the field. Oh, you played Gardner Minshew and the Jaguars, who are actively tanking, but they won 2 good games. And you got to give Mike Vrabel credit. I think if they make the playoffs this year, I think he should be in the running for Coach of the Year, because I think he's really kind of turned this team into the next step. And he was the coach of finally we realized that Marcus Mariota was not the guy. And I think that was the biggest realization that this franchise had to come to. And in many ways, they're saving Derrick Henry like they did for the back half of the season. They're letting Tannehill throw the ball with confidence. So I think Tennessee's a good team. Do I think they're for real? I mean, I think they're for real within their division, but they're not Baltimore and Kansas City good. I would put them on the same level as New England and maybe a couple other teams, but in New England and Pittsburgh, they're on the level of New England and Pittsburgh in my eyes. So second tier AFC.
I don't know if they're saving Derrick Henry. I just don't think Derrick Henry has looked very good since signing that contract. The first week against Denver, he put 3.7 yards per carry. This week it dropped down to 3.4. They're giving him a lot of attempts. It's just he hasn't had that. It's been 2 weeks. He hasn't. I don't know. So I don't know if he's just kind of getting into his game shape, and by October, November he'll be better. But they're lucky to have Tannehill. I'll say that, because I think people forget there was a period of time in Miami when Tannehill was among the better starters in the National Football League. But because of the way, as you alluded to, the way that his tenure there ended, I think it left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. It's like, clearly this guy wasn't as good as we made him out to be. He's never going to be a good starter in this league. The guy has the ability. He has the mental ability, the physical ability to be, maybe not a top tier quarterback, but he's in that upper echelon. He can be very good for your team. And we saw it last year. People kind of question, should they really give him this long-term extension? This is why they did it, because they could see the talent. They could see what he can do for this team. I think he's a perfect fit. I agree that if they get to the playoffs, Vrabel should get Coach of the Year. I don't think he would win it, but I think he should obviously get consideration. I think if the defense can kind of rein things in a little bit, if Derrick Henry can kind of get things going a little more, this could be a dangerous team. But I need to see that happen before I fully buy in.
Well, Derrick Henry's a guy too. You got to remember his running style. He's not elusive. He thrives on, banging bodies and contact and downhill running, and that style is more effective in the colder months because no one wants to tackle, right? Because when it's 85 degrees, it's a lot easier to go up against a guy of his size and try and bring him down, as opposed to when it's 32 and windy. So he's a guy that'll come on later in the season. I'm not too worried about him. And honestly, too, I mean, obviously 25 carries for 84 yards isn't great for a guy that's getting for his money and what he did last year. But again, his style works better in colder months. So if Tannehill is going out there and making throws, I think it's a win-win for everyone in a lot of ways. So Jonnu Smith was on my bench in fantasy. That was a great decision by me. He looks good. You look at, and they were down some weapons offensively too, and you put up 33 points. It's the big calling card for a lot of years with Tennessee. The big criticism was that they couldn't score a lot of points. Now it's because Marcus Mariota was just he's not an NFL quarterback. Now they finally have an NFL quarterback, and they're starting to score points. So I think the defense will come around. I mean, you look at who Mike Vrabel is. I mean, he's going to turn the defense around as the weeks go on. And I think in a lot of ways too, most NFL defenses get better as the season goes on. It's just, I think it's a lot different than the offense. I think the offense always has the advantage in the early months of the season. So we've seen it many years, and I'll use the Vrabel connection through the Belichick coaching tree. You've seen Bill's defenses a lot of years get better as the years go on, or as the weeks go on. Mike's will probably be the same here. So, until they prove me wrong, I think they're a good team. If you count their track record from November of last year to now, they're one of the best teams in football. So, I mean, I'm happy for them. I'm happy happy for friend of the show, Russ Monaro, probably the most. Big Titans guy. Happy his team's getting some wins. So yeah, they're just a good team. Not going to jump off the stat sheet, but credit to them, I guess. It's a good Jacksonville team, though, Ryan. I agree with you. They're going to be a tough out.
Minnesota traveled to Indianapolis. Minnesota's very bad. This was a popular pick going into the season, a team that could win the division, make a run in the playoffs. They look very bad through the first 2 weeks. The defense especially has looked very, very bad. I know they're missing guys, but that was a unit that had a lot of confidence outside of the organization. Within the organization, they haven't looked good. They've looked all out of sync. As a Kirk Cousins detractor, I don't know what the hell happened yesterday. 11 of 26 for 113 yards, 9.3 QBR. He threw 3 interceptions. I don't know if this is necessarily an example of Indianapolis getting things back together. I know the running game looked good. I think it's more just an example of Minnesota is just not a good team through 2 weeks. I understand with the additional playoff spot this year, starting 0-2 isn't the end of the world, but irregardless of the fact that they scored a lot of points against Green Bay week 1, I don't know what you can see from this team through 2 weeks and be confident that they can turn things around because they have not put together inspiring performances. I worry about this team.
Yeah, when you look at the box score, Ryan, it's just not awe-inspiring at all. The 11 completions total, right? And everyone who's watching this is going to see my facial expression. You just see the sheer confusion on my face. I'm trying to mathematically put this together of the amount of 3 and outs or just bad possessions that they had. I get Jonathan Taylor looked really good, and that's to be expected. I think a lot of us expected him to kind of be what he is now. But Kirk Cousins, this is like some peewee football stats right here. I saw a lot of high school stat lines that look a lot better than this. QBR of 9.3, passer rating of 15.9. So some good numbers there. Average 4.3 yards per completion. I think a lot of it, and I feel bad for most of anyone here, is Dalvin Cook. He gets his money, but he got his money with a team that's not putting him in a situation to win football games and to be successful for what he's being paid for. I kind of was on the Kirk Cousins side just to piss you off because it made for good radio back in the day. I don't think he's really an NFL starting quarterback. And you look at a lot of guys around the league, and he's at the bottom. He really is. And it's pretty sad, too, when you compare him to the guy we just talked about, Gardner Minshew, and even Ryan Tannehill. I mean, these are guys that both had these interesting career arcs. One's like a 6th-round pick out of Wazoo, and another guy who was a wide receiver and got the short end of the stick in Miami. And Kirk has had the consistency, right? So he comes in, he's the next guy after RG3. He gets them to the playoffs 1 year. Then he gets paid because he was the best quarterback on the market at the time, which, looking back on it, wasn't really a good financial investment for Minnesota. But it's a game like this, and as a Kirk Cousins fantasy owner, for him to be on my bench, he's not – and here's what I think too, Ryan. I think in a lot of ways they're missing a guy in, and they're missing a guy in Stephon Diggs, right? So Adam Thielen just is not looking good right now. It's a lot easier to kind of go after him. So it's it's kind of concerning if you're a Vikings fan for sure.
The Rams beat the Eagles 37-19. Tampa Bay gets on the board with their first win in the Tom Brady era. They defeat the Panthers 31-17. Green Bay shellacks the Detroit Lions. Final score 42-21. My quick hits from this: the Rams look like they did in 2018. The Eagles are bad. Green Bay might be the best team in the NFC. That's my overreaction from week 2. The first 2 weeks, you could argue they're the best team in the NFC. And Tampa Bay, they didn't start 0-2, which is positive. I know you have something to say about your good pal Tom. Listen, they won 31-17. So what was your takeaway?
Tampa Bay is back, Ryan. Tampa Bay is back. Got to give them props where credit's due. So losing weapons left and right, still getting the job done. Not a fan of Tom anymore for what he did in the past couple of years in New England. But to get his credit, he's got a solid ground game and he's winning football games. So, credit to him, I guess. Tampa Bay's 1-1, beat a bad team. So good for him, I guess, for sure. That's all I got.
The 2 late afternoon games on Sunday. We're going to talk. When I say that these games aren't interesting, I don't mean that there weren't things in there that aren't worth discussing, but it's just compared to the way the games went, they weren't very desirable. The Cardinals defeated football team 30-15. Kyler Murray is building a case for an MVP run if he can continue doing what he's doing. Baltimore toppled over Houston 33-16. Houston's bad. I think everyone should have expected this. I understand they've played the Chiefs and the Ravens the first 2 weeks, but still they haven't looked very good. And that led us, Matt, into a very exciting 4:25 game, the Chiefs and the Chargers. The Chargers saw the debut of their first-round pick, Justin Herbert, who, as I got a text message about it from good friend Zach Cosenza, Justin Herbert apparently looked for real, which my response was, I remember when other quarterbacks looked good in their debut. I will say Herbert did not look anything like I expected him to, and I mean that in a good way. He didn't show really any of the issues that I had for him coming out of Oregon. He looked like an NFL starting quarterback, and he looked like a good one. Whether that is going to remain to be, whether that's going to happen, I mean, apparently if Taylor is healthy, he's going to get the job back. I don't know what's wrong with this organization. They can't get out of their own way. I don't know why I don't just give the kid the reins. But if Herbert can continue doing what he did against Kansas City, I think the Chargers probably found their franchise guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
They had the lead for most of this game, 17-9 with going into the fourth quarter. But, you can never count out the Chiefs. Mahomes making crazy passes. And then Harrison Butker making not only 1 game-winning field goal, but 3 game-winning field goals at the end of the game. And the Chiefs get out of Los Angeles, out of SoFi, with a dub, 23-20. The running game for Kansas City didn't look very good, but, I think there's good things to take out of this game for both teams, man. Obviously, the Chiefs, you saw some good stuff. As obviously, Mahomes looked pretty good. But I think the Chargers, I think ultimately it'll depend on what they end up doing at the quarterback position. I know what Anthony Lynn said, but I feel like even though Herbert's a rookie, it seems like the defense and the supporting cast on the offense is good enough to where this team could maybe sneak into the playoffs. I didn't think that if Taylor was going to start, but if they're actually smart about this and they actually let Herbert kind of take the reins and be their guy, I think they could surprise some people.
I'm a big fan of Justin Herbert. Am I as big of a fan as Mr. Cosenza? Absolutely not.
I think they got to be related, right?
I don't know how, if you're the Chargers, you can go back to Tyrod Taylor after this. and Tyrod Taylor is probably the unluckiest guy out of an NFL starting quarterback because he loses the job to he's like the transition guy to the next franchise quarterback. It was like that with Baker Mayfield. It was like that in Buffalo, I think, too. Like almost everywhere he went to be a starter, at some point he handed off the reins to the next guy. I don't think – and I think a lot of the team would be behind Herbert too. I mean, he went out there and threw for 311 yards. It's not like he was – and he found out minutes before kickoff that he was going to start the game. And he went out there and took the Super Bowl champions in the overtime. So I don't know as a franchise how you could go back to Taylor. We're going to see. I think if Herbert gets another week and plays pretty well, I really think it's going to be difficult to go back to Taylor. But, yeah, I think they found their guy, and he's working with some weapons around him, and he made some good runs too. And, yeah, talk about Harrison Butker, man, a guy who was really good on my fantasy football team last year. Kansas City, I think in many ways he's starting to challenge Justin Tucker for that best kicker in the league conversation. Butker's getting there, just in terms of the way the ball comes off his foot, the accuracy he has. So Kansas City got a nice little battle-tested win there. Going to need it going into a big Monday Night Football game next week against Baltimore. So we'll see. But Herbert he looks like one of the better quarterbacks that, has come out of this draft class so far. I mean, obviously we haven't seen a couple of them, but Herbert looked good. So credit to him. They found their guy, but for the love of God, don't go back to Taylor because it's just – you're right. They can't get out of their own way. Moving to LA had a part of it too, but yeah, Zach's going to listen to this and say, yeah, I was right. And they're talking about, but the difference is that he thinks he's like the best guy to come out of college since Andrew Luck, which is just an incredibly false take. So,
Zach,
that's where we debunk that theory.
Zach, I'm going to urge you, pal, just hold off on the Justin Herbert takes for a little bit until we see what this guy can do with more playing time. But I will give you, I'll give you a bone here. He did look pretty good in his NFL debut. So all those games we just talked about led into a very entertaining Sunday night contest. Might end up being one of the best games of the year between Seattle and New England. It was kind of close throughout, and then Seattle took a 28-17 lead into the fourth quarter, but New England came back, and it all came down to the final play, which came to ended up getting toppled over. Did a little flip there at the end, and that's how Seattle won the game. But the fact that New England put themselves in that position to where they could win the game on one play, that's a big testament to what that team has been able to do so far through the first 2 weeks. Seattle, no, I said Green Bay is arguably the best team in the NFC. But Seattle is letting Russ cook. I said that in the NFC preview. And now I'm sure people are going to get sick and tired of hearing this because now even you got guys like Chris Collinsworth saying it. But if this team was going to be successful, they needed to let Russ cook. And through the first 2 weeks, they've let Russ cook. And I say that Green Bay is arguably, you can make a case, but I think overall, through the first 2 weeks in the NFC, Seattle far and away has been the best team in the conference, in my opinion. And I think that's a testament to New England, what they were able to do on the road in a tough week 2 battle in just the second game with Cam Newton under center. Now, Matt, I asked you last week about your confidence level and New England Patriots. You said it hadn't changed much. You had to wait and see. So what's your confidence level now? I know they lost, but they look very, very good.
Yeah, I think they're going to be a tough team this year to beat. And the style that Cam Newton plays is a big factor in it. I think that they looked really good. And obviously, games like this don't come without some mistakes. Cam Newton had a bad interception in the second half of that game that they were kind of driving, and he tried to force one in and telegraphed it, and it didn't work out. The play call is going to get some scrutiny, but I agree with Josh in that situation. If you're going to have your best player out there and you're going to do the play that's been working the first 2 weeks of the season, just see if see if it works out, and it didn't. Cam said he probably should have bounced it outside. But listen, in a game where you also weren't really expected to win, to go out there and losing James White right before the game too, with the tragedy with his parents, to go out there with that adversity, going across the country, and to really challenge a team that many people thought were going to run away in that game, especially in the second half. A lot of people on Twitter were saying, when they went down double digits, that's kind of when Seattle's starting to pull away. But to Cam's credit, he went out there and kind of led them down the field, force-fed Julian Edelman. Looked like the Tom and Jules connection for a while there. So the critique on the Patriots is still they don't have a lot of weapons. It's because people just don't know who people like Damiere Byrd and Jacoby Myers are. I think they're competent enough to go out there and catch footballs. N'Keal Harry, I'll give him credit. I've been riding him for a while. Had a really good game. Quandre Diggs tried to take his head off, and he still hung on to the ball and went on to have a nice career game. So it's encouraging. I still think 3-2 is realistic going into the bye week, because the first two road games are Seattle and Kansas City. So, yeah, but I mean, listen, you go out there and you put on a show, and Cam looks like he's back to his MVP form. He made some really good throws, and I'm encouraged. I don't expect the team to make the Super Bowl. Don't expect them to win MVP, but I expect them to win 9 to 10 games. I think that's in the realm of possibilities. The defense didn't look good, but Seattle, I think that it's more of a credit to what Russell Wilson is as a quarterback than what the defense is through the first 2 weeks. So Russell Wilson should be in the MVP candidate. He's never received an MVP vote, and they were talking about that on the broadcast last night. I think he's right up. He should be at the top of the conversation, because he was making a lot of really good throws last night. He was the best player on the field the entire night. So it's a testament to Seattle and their offense. And yeah, I'm encouraged. I can't sit there and critique the last play of the game because Cam had 3 touchdowns on that same play through the first 2 weeks. So Patriots fans should be hopeful, I guess. I don't know if Cam will be there next season, but in terms of this season, we could just sit back and enjoy having an MVP as our quarterback.
So that was our fun football review of week 2, and we got through all those games in an hour, basically, which I think is an improvement over last week, what we did. So we're getting better, guys. We're getting better. The bye weeks will really help us out because that's less games we have to talk about. So just stick with us. We're going to get this going. But now we're going to get into some other sports, which is something we haven't been able to do in a couple of weeks. It's been very NFL heavy, but we're going to get into some other sports, and we're going to start in Major League Baseball. It's the final week. It's come up very quickly. It's the final week, though, of the regular season. So we're going to take a look at, most of these teams have 6 or 7 games left, basically. So we're going to take a look here at the playoff picture to this point. So 5 teams, we'll start in the American League. 5 teams have clinched a spot in the American League: Tampa Bay, Chicago, who I was very wrong about, Oakland, Minnesota, and the Yankees. So Seattle's 4 games out. So Cleveland, Houston, Toronto are the final 3 teams. Cleveland's going to get in for all intents and purposes. So you have Houston and Toronto in there as well. Houston's going to probably get in most likely as the second team in the AL West. Then Cleveland and Toronto are probably going to be your wild cards. You have Seattle, who's 4 games out of a wild card spot. Baltimore, the Angels, and Detroit, they're 4.5 out. But for all intents and purposes, they're probably, barring something unforeseen, they're not going to make it. So your AL playoff field is pretty much set at this point. It's just a matter of these teams clinching their spots. So, Matt, I'll ask you this. Do you see any of these? Do you see Seattle or the Angels, Baltimore, Detroit making up 4.5 games, 4 games in a week? Do you see Toronto or Cleveland just completely faltering?
No, this is the playoff field. I could confidently say that, because those are the best teams in the American League. Seattle, I'll give them props. They made a pretty late push through late August and early September, but they were in kind of a deep hole at the beginning of the season to really dig out of. And no other team really kind of jumps out. Baltimore obviously had that famous start, but kind of fell off. So I think the best case for Major League Baseball is to get those teams that are currently projected to be into the playoffs, because it'll talk about Chicago, Ryan, a team that I didn't think was going to be 34-19 and one of the best teams in the American League, on top of the fact that it's Tampa Bay and then Chicago. Then if you go down one further in Oakland, I mean, those are the division leaders basically going to go into the playoffs. And that's something that I don't think a lot of people really projected or thought. Obviously, it's like a 60-game season, so it's going to be a little bit different. But there's a little bit more intrigue in the National League for sure. And much to your disliking, because you're going to have to sweat this one out, Ryan, for a week. But American League's pretty set, and it's American League's going to probably be the better product within the postseason, I think, as well.
You kind of brought it up. The National League, things are kind of wide open. I mean, the Dodgers and the Padres, they both clinched their spots. They've been the two best teams in the National League by far throughout this entire abbreviated regular season. But other than that, there's still 6 spots up for grabs. You have Atlanta right now as the leader in the NL East at 31-22. They're probably going to end up winning the division. Miami's 28-25. But then after that, you have the Cubs at 31-22. They're another team that they're likely going to make it. They're first in the division. They'll probably end up winning that division because the team behind them in the NL Central is the Cardinals. As of right now, they're 26-24. So the Cubs will probably clinch the division here pretty soon. The Braves will probably clinch the NL East pretty soon. Miami, I mean, after those teams, though, I mean, Miami's 28-25. As I said, St. Louis is 26-24. Philadelphia, 27-26. Cincinnati, the final wildcard team as of right now, is 27-27. But then you take a look behind them. Milwaukee's 26-26. San Francisco's 26-26. So they're kind of tied right now with Cincinnati. The Mets are only 2.5 games out. Colorado's only 3 games out. So even though the playoff product in the American League will likely be more entertaining to watch, the week leading up to the playoffs here, this final week, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch in the National League. And as a Phillies fan, yeah, I am going to sweat this out because they're fighting for a playoff spot for the first time since 2011. But the fact that you have so many teams still kind of, I mean, the likelihood of the Mets making a run is pretty doubtful, but they're still only 2.5 out, right? So, I mean, they still have an opportunity. They still have 7 games to make up 2.5 games. That's not crazy. We've seen crazier things happen in baseball. But, Matt, I'll ask you this. So, as I said, Chicago's going to make it. Atlanta's going to make it. Miami will likely make it. They'd have to really falter hard. So who do you think gets in out of that group of teams that I mentioned? I'm gonna go out on a limb here. Philadelphia's gonna get their first playoff spot since 2011. I think they get one of the 2 wild card spots. I think Cincinnati gets one of the 2 wild card spots. I think they overtake St. Louis. And I'm not even, you know what? I'll go a step further. I think Cincinnati takes the second central spot away from St. Louis. And I'm going to go San Francisco to get the final wild card spot, leaving St. Louis out, leaving Milwaukee out, leaving the Mets out, and leaving the Rockies out. That's my prediction.
I think Milwaukee might sneak in. I think the Phillies, if they could take care of business in Washington, Ryan, will have a really good chance to get themselves into the mix permanently. I'll say I'll swap Cincinnati and Milwaukee. That'll be my one change. Talk about a team that already clinched, Ryan, in the Padres. To put it in perspective, I can't even remember the last time the Padres made the playoffs or the last time they were even in contention for anything. The last time I remember them having a winning record and being in contention in September was in 2010. And that was the first of the Giants' years in terms of them winning the pennant. So the historical,
yeah. 2010 is ever since then they haven't won more than 77 games in a season.
So the historical significance, regardless of how many games were played this year, the Padres have been one of you got to put them up there with Seattle, one of the worst teams in baseball during the last decade. So the fact that they were able to go out and be 14 games over 500 and be the second team in the National League to clinch a playoff spot, I think should be recognized more so than, some of these teams in the wild card running. But yeah, the historical significance of that is big, especially because of that being 2010 was the last time they had a winning record. They didn't even make the playoffs that year, I don't think, Ryan, because that came down to the final day of the regular season and the Giants got in, and that was before they had the second wild card berth, which San Diego would have probably got in with. So you got to go back even farther. I think like 2007 or 2008 was the last time they were into playoffs.
2006, you'd have to go farther back. And they haven't won a playoff series since 1998. So I agree that's a very good point that you brought up, that this is probably going to be the first time. I mean, I said they won a playoff series in 98, but really this is going to be the first time in our lifetime where we see the Padres win a playoff series.
Well, yeah, because didn't they lose to St. Louis in 2006 in the postseason? Or Colorado?
It says they've lost the LDS, so they did. They lost to St. Louis.
So we have not seen a Padres win in our lifetime. I don't count 98. We were like 1 year old. So this, and they will have a good chance because of the way the playoffs are structured this year. Probably get a team like, I don't know, Miami or someone. So there's a lot of historic significance behind that. And obviously it helps that it's a shortened season, but now it kind of puts pressure on Seattle. It was like the last team that I think you and I can't recall being in the postseason at any point during like our brains working, right?
Yeah.
In terms of our memory. Like out of everyone else, top to bottom in terms of baseball, and even the Marlins fit into that too, in terms of teams that I remember being in the postseason at some point, but it's down to Seattle now. So that'll be a conversation for another offseason as to how they could fix that franchise. But San Diego went all in, and it's paying off. So it'll be a fun final week for me because I have no rooting interest with my team being garbage. So it'll be nice to just sit and watch fun baseball for a week. So hopefully they get in for your sake, Ryan, the Phillies. Hopefully they do.
So me and Mal will give our playoff predictions in next week's episode. And next week will be a very fun week. So I didn't know if I would be for or against the expanded postseason, but next Wednesday, September 30th, there are 8 playoff games. 8 MLB playoff games. You have 4 for the AL. It'll be game 2 of those wild card series, and then it'll be the first game, the NL wild card series. So that sold me. I'm sold on the expanded postseason staying after this year.
No.
If you're going to give me 8 postseason games in one day, I'm all for it. Give me it.
So here's my rebuttal to you, Ryan. It would be a lot better if they had a full October atmosphere, right? With fans in the stands. I could get behind that, but I'm interested to see. I don't think it should stay after this year. I don't.
I don't know. I'm all in. I haven't been a fan of some of the things they've done, but I'll say that the DH I want to stay.
Rob just wants to slap a DH on everything. Just put a DH in the World Series and the All-Star. Just put it everywhere. He just loves the DH. So
Matt, I'm telling you, as a National League lifer, as someone that was firmly against it for years, it's made the product so much better. I don't know why I was against it for so long, but I hope it stays. I hope this expanded postseason stays. There's some things I don't want to stay, but these are the things. I think that this is good. I can't wait to watch 8 MLB playoff games in one day. That's incredible. That'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's tough. I would love to know what some of our baseball fan friends would have to say about it. For a full season, Ryan, to what you're saying to keep it, I don't know how that would look in terms of just records but it would be more TV revenue. And I think that's something in a sport like baseball that's kind of not dying off, but kind of falling aside to other sports in terms of revenue and viewership, in terms of just developing fans. the MLB postseason is probably the best thing they have to offer. And I think expanding that could be it. I don't know if this route is the way to go, but we'll see. I'm not going to make an opinion until I watch it next week. So we'll see.
So we're going to talk about golf next. I don't think we've talked about golf yet. No, we did. We talked about, we did. So this is the second time we've talked about golf. So there was a major this past weekend, over the weekend, I guess I should say. It's the U.S. Open at Winged Foot in Mamaroneck, New York. It tripped a lot of people up. Bryson DeChambeau won his first major at 6 under. The next closest guy that finished second, Matthew Wolff, was even. And everybody else was over par. So this was a very, very difficult course for a lot of these guys. Some big names didn't even make the cut to make it into the weekend. But you give a lot of credit to Bryson. He obviously he put on he became a little bit of a thicker boy. He's obviously he's getting a lot of yards off the tee. You know, that's kind of been his thing now this year. And it was kind of fun watching him kind of just navigate through this course. Because I said a lot of people struggle with this. Even if it was just for one round, people struggled a lot. But Bryson, I don't know if he was just in the zone or something, but he put up 69, 68, 70, 67 for a final 6 under 274. As I said, nobody else was even close. Even Matthew Wolff, he put up a 74 in round 2, a 75 in round 4. So I got to give a lot of credit to Bryson. Now, he's been in the news a little bit this year for some interesting reasons. There was that incident with the camera guy that he was kind of upset about. I know there's some people, some golf fans that aren't the biggest fan of Bryson DeChambeau, and I can understand why. But I thought that he put together one of the best performances, not only I've seen this year, but that I've seen in a while in terms of golf, especially in a major too. It was, I don't know. It's just, it was crazy the way he outclassed the field. I mean, as I said, the course was very tough, but he made it seem like it was very easy. Like, it was incredible.
Well, yeah, I think people underestimate how tough that course actually is. And this is what pops my tarts, Ryan. I'm going to do mine now, just to expedite the show a little bit too. What pops my tarts is when, and I'm explicitly calling someone out here, is when people say that golf is easy or that golf is just for old guys and it's a hobby. If you look at Winged Foot, the course itself, you and I, Ryan, we would probably quit after the first 4 holes. Like, that's how difficult this course can be. And we saw it with professional guys. Tiger struggled, Phil struggled. Like, any golfer that you probably know did not play well this weekend. So, yeah, Bryson is a very polarizing figure in golf, Ryan. Big win for him, obviously, and he kind of ran away with it too. But that's what pops my tarts, is people who think that golf is easy, because it is probably one of the most difficult sports out there, just in terms of being able to be consistently good. And to DeChambeau's credit, I mean, he's played well ever since the tour restart for the most part. I mean, he's been right in the mix of a lot of highly touted tournaments. So, yeah, it's a guy who's kind of coming onto the scene, and obviously very noted for his weightlifting during the quarantine, getting a lot more distance. But, yeah, I am explicitly calling someone out for pops my tarts. Golf is hard. You know who you are. Golf is hard, and it's not a hobby. It's a sport. So there you go.
So I'll just do my pops my tarts now, just so we can.
Am I wrong, Ryan? Am I wrong in any? You're someone who plays a decent amount of golf. It's not easy. It is pops my tarts. I've wanted to snap my driver 5 times on like one hole. Like, it's just ridiculous. It's such a difficult sport.
So my pops my tarts, I agree with you. My first pops my tarts is when something gets into your eye when you're recording a podcast. That's number 1. Okay.
It's Probably an eyelash. You
My
good?
actual Pops My Tarts is parlays in sports betting. So I had an 11-team money line parlay yesterday, Mr. DeLuca. I had the Bears, who won, the Cowboys, who won, the Packers, who won, the Bills, who won, the 49ers won, the Steelers won, the Buccaneers won, the Cardinals won, the Ravens won, the Chiefs won, and the Eagles lost. 11 teams, got 10 of them right, but my heart and soul, my dear team, my Philadelphia Eagles were the reason that my parlay didn't hit. So that's what pops my tarts this week is parlays and sports betting.
Yeah, go Birds, I guess, right? That's the epitome of brutality, Ryan, to say the least. So I'm feeling for you here for sure.
So that was pops my tarts for this week. We're going to move on now to some more sports because I don't want to break my heart anymore. The Stanley Cup is the finals. So we started with the round robin and the play-in games and stuff back in late July. And now we have made it to the Stanley Cup Finals, the matchup that I'm sure some people out there predicted, but I can't imagine there was a lot of people that predicted this matchup. The Tampa Bay Lightning and the Dallas Stars, who have completely, I don't even know how to describe them. So they defeat Calgary 4-2. I think people thought that could happen, but then they win in 7 games against the Avalanche, who looked unstoppable. They win 5 games against the Golden Knights, who looked unstoppable. And now they win game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals against the Lightning, a team who has kind of just gotten through their side of the bracket without many issues. They beat the Blue Jackets in 5 games, beat the Bruins in 5 games. The Islanders gave them a little bit of a fight, but they still won that series in 6. But Tampa Bay now down 1-0 in the Stanley Cup Finals. Dallas, I will say this. Dallas controlled those first 2 periods. I thought Tampa Bay looked a lot better in the third. So I will need to wait and see. Game 2 is tonight. We got to wait and see if that momentum carries over. But Matt, you made a good point, and we were talking about this before we did the podcast a day or 2 ago. If Tampa Bay doesn't win this series, there's going to be a lot of questions. There's going to be a lot of what ifs with this core because it's not going to be a good look. I hate to disparage the Stars because obviously they're a good team. They made it to the Stanley Cup Finals.
I'll disparage them, Ryan. They had one of the worst offenses in the league during the regular season. They fired their head coach in December. Nothing really jumps out at you. I mean, all the guys they have were much better 5 years ago than they are now. You got to credit Anton Khudobin, though. He's the sole reason why they beat Vegas in 5 games. But this is like handing the Stanley Cup on a silver platter, even though technically the cup itself is a silver platter in some ways. But besides the corny jokes, this is literally handing it to Tampa Bay in many ways. And they've had, for the most part, this same core for a very long period of time, Ryan, and they have not lived up to expectations as they should have. They're starting in some ways to turn into the Washington Capitals in terms of being very good in the regular season and just not living up to expectations when it matters the most. But yeah, tonight's a must-win for them. It's you gotta start winning the cup because they are by far, I think, the deepest and most talented team, arguably in the entire NHL. And I think, and you saw what they did to the President's Trophy winners in the Bruins. I don't care who was in net. There's a lot of other guys on the ice besides Yaroslav Halak. So this is a team that, in my opinion, is the best in the league, and they should make quick work of Dallas if their talent prevails. But yeah, I don't really know how the ratings are and everything with Dallas being in over Vegas. But Tampa Bay, if they lose, Ryan, it's not a good look for John Cooper and the boys, that's for sure.
No, I agree 100%. It's just, I talked about this with the Flyers. For them, it's a little different because I said, there always comes that period at some point of years in the future, when you look back, you're like, wow, that was probably one of the best chances we would have had to win a cup. The Lightning is seemingly have had that for years. And I really feel like if they don't win this, I'm not going to say I don't know how they can come back, but because they still have talent. They have a lot of great guys on the team, but this is probably their best chance to win a cup. And I know they're without Stamkos, I get it, but they have so much other talent on that team.
Don't
I
make
think
that
it's
an
unacceptable.
excuse.
No, I'm not making that excuse.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I still think it's unacceptable with all the talent that they do have that they can't beat the Stars. Unless I get it, Khudobin is going on a career once-in-a-lifetime run. I understand it. Not that he wasn't a good goalie before, but it's a completely different level now. I don't know. We'll see. I did tell you that I think Tampa Bay will bounce back tonight, so we'll see if I'm correct about that. It seems like I haven't been correct about a lot of things with the hockey playoffs this year, but we'll see. It'll be fun to watch. If they go down 2-0, though, I think we've seen comebacks, but I think that's it. I think Dallas will just have all the momentum at that point. I think that they'll be well on their way to a cup. But we're going to get a NASCAR Power Minute in before we end the show with Start Bench Cut and NASCAR Power Minute. So they just finished round 1 of the playoffs, Matt. The round of 16 is now over, so now they've entered the round of 12. So 4 drivers are out of it. Matt DiBenedetto, Ryan Blaney, William Byron, and Cole Custer got cut. It's over. Their playoff run is over.
How many syllables is DiBenedetto?
Okay, so we'll do this together. DiBenedetto, 5.
Whenever I say his name, I add 3 extra, so that's why I had to ask you. Must suck to be the broadcaster and have to say that all race. So who's the favorite, Ryan? Is Kevin Harvick still playing well,
now,
racing well?
Harvick picked up 2 dubs in round 1, so
Good
now
for
he has
him.
9 wins. That's the most wins anyone has had since Carl Edwards, I think, in 2008. I think might have been 2000. It was 2008 or 2009. I think it's the most wins anyone's had in a season since then. So Harvick has 9 wins now. He's clearly the favorite at this point. And ultimately, it doesn't matter what he does now because at the final race of the season in Phoenix, it's a winner take all. So he can do as well as he wants now, but he still has to do it that final race of the season. But Denny Hamlin looked solid. He's second in the standings right now, 19 points back. Keselowski and Logano, 2 Penske drivers right now, are 3 and 4. Austin Dillon was probably the biggest surprise of round number 1. He was one of the guys in my NASCAR playoff primer that I said would probably just get out round 1. He was just happy to be there. So he proved me wrong. He put together a string of great finishes to start the playoffs. He's now in the number 8 spot, albeit he is in tough competition. So Austin Dillon and Eric Almirola, the points got reset, so they are now tied with 3,005 points. Kyle Busch is right there at 3,004. Clint Boyer also has 3,004. And Kurt Busch is right now the 12th driver in the round of 12. He has 3,001 points, but it should be a lot of fun. We got some fun tracks coming up. Talladega is part of this round of 12, which is always that's when a guy like maybe Austin Dillon or I guess any of these guys, Kurt Busch or somebody could, because a super speedway track anybody can kind of win. It's always a possibility. So that'll be a chance for a guy that's not a Kevin Harvick or a Denny Hamlin to punch their ticket into the round of 8. That'll be the best opportunity. But you got Las Vegas here coming up this Sunday night, actually, if you can believe that. And then following week, you have Talladega, and then you end the round of 12 at the Charlotte Roval, the Bank of America Roval 400. So this is going to be a fun round. We'll see who makes it to the round of 8. We'll see if any surprises make it. But the bigger news in NASCAR that weren't the playoffs, Ross Chastain will be the driver for the number 42 next year. That was confirmed this morning, actually right when I woke up, which was kind of cool. And Bubba Wallace, who's we're waiting for this domino to fall, this guy that has over $20 million in sponsorship. Denny Hamlin might be forming a racing team, and Bubba Wallace might be driving for that team. It seems like that's kind of where we're at this point. That's where the rumors are pointing. So that'll be exciting to see if that actually takes place. Of course, this is, as I said, this is kind of the biggest domino to fall because this is going to be a really interesting, silly season to see where guys go. But as soon as that Bubba Wallace domino falls, I think we'll see a lot of other news coming out shortly after that. But we got to wait to see if Denny Hamlin does end up doing this. And if he does, if Bubba Wallace ends up driving for him. So that'll be fun to see. That was your NASCAR Power Minute, Matt. So I hope you learned some stuff about NASCAR.
Yeah, I don't know who Ross Chastain is, so it's
okay.
Yeah,
well, there you go. Well, now you know that he's
am I
driving the
am I supposed to
42
know
car.
who is that a well-known guy?
You probably wouldn't know who he is.
All right. So I learned something new. There you go.
So now we're going to finish the show with the start bench cut. And this week we're doing NFL starting time slots. So 1 o'clock, 4:25. We're not doing the 4:05. If you play 4:05, that means your team's not that good. And Sunday night. We're not doing Monday night either. Just Sunday NFL time slots, the main ones, 1 o'clock, 4:25, and 8:20. So Matt, because I'm such a nice guy, I'll let you go first. What's your SBC for this week?
Oh, you abbreviated it. This one's tough because it depends kind of how the week shakes out. I'm going to start. You know what? I'm going to go on a hot take. I'm going to start Sunday Night Football. You're the premier game of the week. You build up all the anticipation to the night. I'm not in school anymore, so I don't need to worry about, the waking up for a presentation the next day or have to do homework or anything. So I can just watch the game. I'm starting Sunday Night Football. I'm going to bench 425. Again, that means you're a premier game. You're going to get Jim and Tony on the mic, or Joe and Troy, depending on what network you're on. And then I'm going to cut 1 o'clock because I'm not even half awake by 1 o'clock, and there's 10 other games going on, and it's just so much. And then you feel like you're missing out on a lot of the action because you're watching your game. So I'm cutting 1 o'clock. So I'm doing inverse order: start night, bench 425, and then the 1 o'clock I could do without.
I'm going to cut Sunday night. And it's not so obviously there was a time when I would have to wake up early on Monday, so that played into it. But it's just, I think there comes a point, and I guess it's different for everybody, where you really like those primetime games, and then all of a sudden it just goes off a cliff and you hate them. And I think I've reached that point. 22 was the age where I reached that point. I'd say even maybe late 21. And I say that because it's fine if your team's not playing it, but when your team's playing a Sunday, this is just the case for me. When my team, the Eagles, are playing a Sunday night game, I get too amped. Number one, I'm kind of impatient when it comes to sports. So I hate having to wait all day long until 8:20 to watch my team play. And then once the game finally starts, I'm amped up before the game. I get too amped up during the game to where after the game, I have a lot of energy. I just downed like a 6-pack of Coke. It's not that I have to get to sleep early for anything, but I have trouble getting back down. It's like as I said, it's either like I just had a lot of soda. It's like I just had like a great exercise where I have so many endorphins and I'm just my energy level goes over through the roof. And I don't like that. I need time to decompress from whatever happened in the game. So I'm going to cut Sunday night. I'm going to bench 1 o'clock because I've become a fan of those 1 o'clock games. I like how you can kind of stroll out of bed, for me anyway. Kind of stroll out of bed at 10, 11 o'clock, have your breakfast, maybe do a couple things around the house. Then you just settle down, watch your 1 o'clock game. And then you still have time after the game to do activities. You maybe do more stuff around the house, maybe go for a little bike ride through the neighborhood, whatever you want to do, you still have time. And I'm going to start 4:25. That's always been my favorite time. Ever since I was a little kid, I loved when the Eagles played those late afternoon games because, as you said, that's when you get the good announced teams. It's my battery pack dies. That's when you get those good announced teams. That's when I love you. Kind of just settle down. You just sit in front of the TV. Your dinner in front of the TV. You see that sunset. That's one of my favorite aesthetics. You see the sunset on the field, so the game starts, sun's still up, and then you just kind of see it get more and more lower until it becomes like a night game. I don't know. There's something about the 425 aesthetic for the NFL I've always loved. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start 425, bench 1, cut 820.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just not used to a lot of 1 o'clock games from all
Oh,
the Tom Brady
stop.
years. You know,
Just
as a
stop.
football elitist, most of my games during my childhood would always be 425 or later. So that we rarely have to play a 1 o'clock game. So I'm just, as a fan of a team with 6 Super Bowl rings, it's just you wake up and you got a game at 8:30. I mean, it's just Al and Chris every other week, I guess. So it's I'm a fan of the later games for sure. I'm not always fully awake during the 1 o'clock slot. I know for fans of teams like the Jets, you live for the 1 o'clock start time. But yeah, I don't know. It's I know I'm going to catch a lot of heat in the group chat for this, Ryan, for sure. But Sunday Night Football, I'm starting because you're waiting all day for Sunday night. It's literally in the theme song. So yeah, I wait all day to watch Cam Newton have another great game. So starting that.
So that was episode 7 of Best Available Podcast. We will be back next week, give some week 3 recap. We'll talk about our thoughts about what happens in NFL week 3. Baseball postseason will be starting up in a couple of days at that point, so we'll talk about that. Theoretically, the Stanley Cup Finals could be over by that point, so we'll have stuff to talk about for that. Some other stuff too, just a lot of surprises throughout the entire podcast, so be sure to stay tuned for that one. Want to thank you all for listening, and we'll catch you guys next time.